Hello and welcome to the Enlightenment Podcast and to our listeners and viewers around the world. We feel that there's a lot to talk about in these times, and at this point in time, we feel it's especially important to have a dialogue around Palestine, to build awareness, to give some context, and to reach as many people as we can. Today, we are delighted that we have a very special guest with us, the least of whose accomplishments is that she is Hanan's aunt. Please welcome Samia Halaby to the podcast.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Samia. We are so excited for you to join us. And it was so lovely to see you in London last week at your brilliant, brilliant show.
Thank you. It was all a pleasure.
Well, before we get in, just in case people don't know enough about you, I'll just give a very short bio. It would take too long to list, but Samia, I think it's fair to say, is something of an icon, legend in the art world. Born in Jerusalem, Samia is a Palestinian American visual artist, activist, educator, and scholar who lives in New York. A brilliant artist, her work is shown at leading museums around the world, including the Guggenheim in New York, the Institut du Monde in Paris, the Palestinian Museum in Birzeit, and many more. And just last week, her work was shown as part of the Electric Dreams exhibit at the Tate Modern in London, and we went to see it, and it is definitely worth going to if you haven't seen it. But let's start with the really important stuff. Hanan, how are you related to Samia?
Yeah. So Samia's dad, Asad Halaby, and my grandfather, Shukri, are brothers. So Asad is Shukri's older brother, and my mom, Nawal Halaby, and Sami are first cousins. And I grew up hearing all about Samia. My mother was so proud of her cousin and her art and her outlook on life. And when I was at university in the US, my mom took us to the Guggenheim to see her cousin Samia's work, and she was really excited for us to see it. And I think Samia was the first Palestinian artist to be exhibited at the Guggenheim.
Yeah. Samia, I'm going to jump in with our first question. One of the things that we've discussed on this podcast quite a bit is the propaganda that Palestine was a land without a people. And we obviously know that's not true. And I thought it might be an interesting way to start to ask you about your memories of growing up in Palestine, and maybe, you can share some of your family story about being part of the diaspora.
Of course, I'll be glad to. The propaganda is so ambient. My first thought, as you're asking, is that propaganda has become so strong an element in our modern life through media that it is controlling a lot of the actions that should be controlled more by considering reality. So a lie is told and it is believed, and that is so amazing. So we find ourselves all the time trying to argue against them. I try my best not to waste my time arguing with their propaganda, but presenting our view. But in a way, your question does balance the two. Of course, it is ridiculous for anyone in this day and age to believe that any land as important a piece of real estate as being a piece of land between three huge continents, the very crossroads of civilization for millennia, could be a land without a people. That's just so outrageous a lie. It is hard. It is hard to believe that anyone believed it. But of course, if you're paid money to believe it, you would believe it. And that is the case much of the time. There is much money that flows into this propaganda. Um, for me, Palestine is a place that's me. It's me, it's my DNA, the cells that make up my body grew up there over many centuries, to my knowledge. It's a place of learning. It's a place of artists. It's a place of great buildings, memories. My grandmother taking me to the churches of Jerusalem, and those were not built yesterday, and they were not without. They were not a land without a people. It was a land with civilization at the very heart of it. So that's my response. As to personal experience. Yes, I was born in Jerusalem. My family's both sides are Jerusalemites. Um, but my father, as he grew up, experienced the imperialist, I should correct that, the colonizing violence of the British, and uh, suffered a great deal with his family and many Palestinian families during the First World War, with a famine that was artificially created by England and America, which brings us to Gaza and the artificial famine created there. But yes, it had been done before, and my father struggled against it, and in spite of it, and lost three older brothers and lost his father. In due time, became quite successful, and to him, Palestine became something very much part of his very core, and losing everything in 1948 was a great shock. We were fortunate. I was fortunate. I had parents who protected me. So to me, the shift from Palestine to Beirut was relatively easy, but that's only a moment in time. It takes forever. It would take forever to get Palestine out of me. I'm not sure you can.
No, I'm not sure you can. I agree, Sami, and I think with every generation, it's very embedded. But with the Nakba in 1948 and your forced expulsion, if you like, yours, my mother's, the whole family, how did it shape you personally? I know it's in your DNA, but also the work that you do, your art.
Well, I'm going to share the screen with you a little bit because you asked the question that I can, let's see if I can get the right thing here. Share what, yes, we were going to share this and share, but I have to go back to this picture.
Mhm.
All right, painting. Yes, here we are. Do you see that?
Yes, we can. It's lovely.
Okay, this painting is called Our Beautiful Land, Stolen in the Night of History. And
Mm.
here, this painting was done a few years ago, and I'm 88 now, or will be in a few days. And I
Happy
was
birthday.
86 or 87 when I did that, and the Nakba happened to me when I was 11.
Wow.
So, all of those years, here is a painting of essentially, in my abstract painting, I never cover political subjects, but this is more about an idea of land. And you can see on the surface, on the top line, there are little squares and lights like a city at night. And then it's as though I sliced the land and
Mhm.
showed you the richness of the earth, and the blue is the water in the earth, and at the top is the night sky. So these things remain with us, and I don't know how to explain this other than to say it affects you, and it gets into the very nature of all your feelings. And of course, that's not the only thing that affects you. It as one event, as time goes by, there's event following experience. Even most recently, maybe in the last decade, I began to realize one of the great things that Palestinians of my parents and my generation is missing: the people, the connections, the life we had, the kind of connections we had. Um, Even at 11, I could remember that my classmates would have been my friends for a lifetime. And here they were scattered, and they had brothers and sisters whom I haven't met, etc. But my parents could feel it even worse, because I remember the loneliness they felt on their first years in America, where all of the social connections they had with family were completely absent.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something about it's interesting because people don't talk about that with the refugee experience. Um, it's what is it that stays with you? As you said, you were 11 and still now when you're 86, you make that painting. is it the sense of uprootedness that you don't and the forcedness of that experience that because you went to Beirut at the age of 11?
Right. And no, I think it is completely something else, Shamim. I think we come out of the experience. It's an ugly experience and we're angry. We'd like to get back, etc. But it doesn't make the whole of us.
Yeah.
It may be there is still a part that says, I want to learn, I want to go to school, I want to have friends, I want to eat, I want to dance, I want to enjoy my new life. I want to create a new society, and you proceed. But there are times when this new society doesn't allow you to proceed because, no, you're a refugee. You're not allowed to do that. It comes from the outside. So the Nakba ends up being a method of colonialism and then imperialism of isolating us and imposing on us a second or third class, or now trying to impose on us non-existence. So the more they impose on us non-existence, the more we say no. Not only do we exist and live, but we also create art that's better than your art even. So, it's a way of fighting. Existing is fighting for me, for Palestinians, for Cubans, for African Americans, for anybody who's oppressed in this world.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it very much so. And actually, you mentioned last week when we were having lunch that you and Mama used to play in the street in Beirut as refugees. You lived opposite each other. I didn't know that. But also, what's wonderful about you is that you continue to, even though you moved to the US with your family, you continue to visit Palestine regularly. But how was it for you the first time you visited after the Nakba and after, what profound moments did you encounter, or anything that shifted your view or your art, or that actually re-emphasized it or evolved it in any way, shape, or form?
Your question has two parts in it. The one part maybe you're a little unconscious of that I'm super conscious of is that those things that seem like landmarks, the boundaries between Lebanon and Palestine are very flimsy because they were there. We know they were put there by the British. The generation before me used to just ride a horse across. Nobody ever said, stop, there's a border here. Where's your passport?
Yeah.
There were no passports. We were one country, one land. And now you cross to the US. They've gone to the US. It's a point of departure. You're no longer an immigrant. I'm still a refugee and I'm still an immigrant. My father says, now you're a new country, forget, you're starting all over, open your heart. And well, I tried, but no, they don't want to let me.
Yeah.
So it is in the culture. The propaganda of a land without a people has its cousins and its cousins' cousins, and it's ambient, and you run into it all the time. So when I first returned to Palestine, and also through Jordan, through Amman, the Palestinian community there, my amazement was how easy it was to make friends. Suddenly, all the people I met could be my friends, and I was delighted, and they were delighted. We had the same culture, the same history, the same experience, the same oppression, the same everything. And we could have been brothers and sisters, whereas here it was difficult. It remains difficult. My friends are few and rare and very special people here because they are unusual, because they themselves break through that propaganda that creates the ambience. But also, I'm a member of the middle class, as all artists are. We live by the product of our labor. We don't sell our hours for wage work. So we are different from people who are in the working class who experience this oppression in a different way. So I want to just condition what I'm saying by saying I'm describing the ambience of the middle class in America.
Yeah, absolutely. And your father, as you said, became very successful, self-made, and then lost everything and had to start all over again, like many Palestinians in diaspora and as
Yes.
refugees. Yeah, yeah.
The other thing to remember is even though I'm a refugee and an immigrant and not living in my own country, it doesn't mean I didn't make good in the new life financially. And it doesn't mean I am in a refugee camp. Um, but nevertheless, they're suffering more than by far. Say Gaza, the history of Gaza, as people like me who were pushed into Gaza by war and by vicious attack and terror, and then treated like refugees, and now completely. Well, we don't need to go on right now, but
Mm.
that there are different situations that arise, but still we're all subject of this. We're all subjects of this horrendous capitalist persecution of peoples for the sake of profit.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about your art for a second. I love this idea that you are an artist, or people become artists because they can't do anything else. It's kind of this need. Or you're like, oh, how romantic. But I but I wonder, do you feel that, like, was that the way it was for you, or was the art become more of a political statement, or how did you come to art and know that that was where you wanted to spend your time?
There are things along the way. I think many of us are lucky to be able to allow uh, something that's in our society and in us and maybe in my genes as well to come through. I feel very lucky that I've been able to be a painter all my life. Uh, and to prove how lucky I felt about it, I mean, a couple of years ago, for some reason, I kept telling myself, "Oh, Samia, you're a painter," like reassuring myself that there's no more danger. I've become a painter. So, but
Brilliant one too.
But that's like the eternal thing of any artist, isn't it?
But
Always.
in America, artists, when I started teaching at the Kansas City Art Institute, artists had the bad rap of being known as the dumb ones who couldn't make it in college, who came to art because that's the only place they'd be accepted.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
so all kinds of things are said about artists. Artists are free in society if they're able to survive somehow. Many of them are willing not to have a comfortable living in order to continue doing their artwork. So,
Mm.
uh, but for me, it was a slow discovery that allows me to say in hindsight that it was part of I saw it in my family in a kind of a strange way. I saw my paternal auntie Millie, whom you knew, Hanan,
Yes,
always loved doing things with her hands.
yes.
If it were in the kitchen making wara dawali of the tiniest little wara dawali you could possibly roll, to embroidering, to just loving beautiful things, to making things. And I saw that in many members of the family. Um, but I hadn't known yet that there was a Khalil Halaby or a Sophie Halaby. One day, my Auntie Sultani took me to visit Sophia Halaby, who was a painter in Jerusalem. But before her, there was also Khalil Halaby, who had painted what I call the equivalent to Giotto's ceiling in forgot the name of the chapel, but it is in the Syrian church in Bethlehem going down towards the Mahd, that downhill
Yes.
main road,
Yeah.
uh, to the, what is it, Church of the Nativity in English. There's a church where he painted the entire church. There are uh, large uh, true fresco paintings in that church covering the entire ceiling and all the walls. Stories, biblical stories, the saints that are known more in Arab Christianity than in Western Christianity. Daniel in the lion's den, which was hilarious for me because poor Khalil Halaby never saw a lion in his life, I'm sure. And just like the early Italian painters who never saw a camel in their life, but painted a camel nevertheless, there were the lions in the lion's den that look, their faces looked like old Palestinian men, and just still to this day makes me laugh lovingly at it. But they're very beautiful frescoes. So let's see, how did I become an artist? It was in my family, in my genes, in my wishes, in my desire, and I painted and I drew. And when it came time to go to college, I suffered because I was good in mathematics and had high grades in many areas. And so here I am, the dumb person who couldn't get into college turning into art. But I'm just making a joke, of
I
course.
know. Far from a very smart student.
So my mother sent my eldest brother took me to all the buildings to see if I could decide what I wanted to study. Of course, refugee immigrant, I'm not a poor, downtrodden human being, refugee immigrant, nevertheless, not to forget all these things, working against like the salmon that swims upstream, against all odds. And so, it was almost a silly reaction. It's a teenage reaction of someone who knows what they want but doesn't know what they want. The chemistry building had a bad smell. I said, no, I'm not spending 4 years in this building. So, and mathematics gave me a headache. I always aced my exams, but I came out with a headache. So I said, no, none of this. So my mother said, you always drew. Why don't you take art? I said, great, I'll take art, but I want to earn my living and be independent. So I registered in design and commercial art. But that didn't last very long. My favorite courses were painting and drawing. And so slowly it became the path that I took.
Oh, interesting.
And also Auntie Sultana, as you said, she was also the importance of women earning their own living. She had the first bookshop, I believe, in Jerusalem, and then she opened Amman after they lost Palestine. So I think it's in the family, the sort of independence and art, and it's in the DNA, as you say.
Yeah.
And Samia, because Shamim and I, we've always felt it's very important, representation matters, whether it's through films, books, art, paintings, and so on. And I think now more than ever. So why do you agree with that? And why do you feel Palestinian stories and art matter now more than ever?
I think, first of all, you might call it Palestinian ego. I think we have a very valuable culture as Palestinians.
Yeah.
And I think that there is something called human civilization that we want to preserve down the road in the future. One can say Palestine, one can say America, etc., but there is a larger thing than all of us, which is human civilization. And I think Palestine's history contributes in major ways to that. And I do not want to see that being subtracted from human civilization as we go into the future. I think that would be a great loss. And in many ways, some of the things I've done, and devoted a lot of effort to have been for the audience not being other people. And I want to share again for just a minute to say that I've written quite a bit, and I think mostly this book is called Growing Shape, and it describes my actual method of making drawings because it describes the future, my ideas about the future of art. This one is drawing the Kafr Qasim massacre. And this one I made especially for Palestinian youth. I want them to know their own history because the youth is our future. The young ones are amazing these days, and we should support them. So I want them to know this history, and I want them to feel that they should imitate my actions, that they should take sections of Palestinian history. This is very important. The resistance of the village of Kafr Qasim to the massacre that happened there in 1956 is exemplary and should not be forgotten. First of all, by our own kids, and next of all, by all young people these days, as young people are moving and using Palestine as a call word for international revolution. So be it. Let us go with them. Join us and share in this cultural heritage. And Liberation Art of Palestine was something I wrote about the artists of the Intifada, because everybody was treating the Intifada like boys throwing stones, when in fact the Intifada was many, many very impressive committees that had formed impromptu of grassroots committees, struggling against the oppression in many different ways. And the artists were a great part of this. And they were treated, Palestinian artists treated as non-existent, as an imitation of, you didn't have art until the Israelis came. Well, I don't want to use bad language, but I could.
You can if you want. We're okay with that.
We are a very visual people. The art of the Arab world and of the Palestinian is millennia old. So to disregard that and to call us, and in this book, I made a very careful and very academic, if you would, analysis of the form and language of the Palestinian artists, and described their history. So this is another a gift to young Palestinians. I think it should be part of their awareness as we proceed forward.
Absolutely. And I think everyone listening should go and get a copy for themselves and share it as well.
Yeah. And then on that same note about representation, Samia, just because I love what you said, and there's also another element to it, which is that the reality is in the art world, as in the film world. When Hanan introduces herself as a film producer, there are just very few Palestinian film producers, and that people know, and I expect it's the same when you get to be an artist of a certain stature. So there's just being in that field, existing in that field matter as well. Maybe it's less to do with you on a daily basis, but is it important for you to put that face as a Palestinian and an artist?
To just be a well-known artist, for just art itself, painting itself, is not as meaningful as being a Palestinian artist on an international level. So to me, that's the legacy I want to leave. Because you cannot help it, because if you say you're only interested in being a well-known artist, you're basically saying, please accept me as Western culture. Let me be another master or mistress of capitalist culture. Let's call it by its real name.
Exactly.
But if you say Palestinian, then you're insisting there is something else in the world. There's also Chinese and Japanese and African and South American and et cetera, et cetera. And all of these divisions that they create to pretend that they are the ones who are leading the world, when the scientists and the corporations are mostly non-Western in their blood and their origin. Number of Arabs in corporations doing scientific, contributing to science, the number of Indians, Japan, China, you name it, the corporations are loaded with non-European ancestry people. And there is something that is global in the way we have to proceed in the future. And so I insist on this because, one, it hurts that they stole Palestine, and damn it, they're not going to steal it. I'm going to, if anything else, I'm persuaded they won't last very long, by the way. So that gives me even more courage and optimism. You know, they're collapsing already. The faster they go, the better. So that's part of it. This is why it's very important.
Yeah.
I agree. I think they are imploding from the inside and out. Yeah.
And okay, so speaking about being a Palestinian artist, your alma mater in the US canceled your exhibition at the last minute. This was just after October the 7th happened. Obviously, I know why I think that happened. Do you agree that you were being penalized for speaking freely? And what does it say about the state of the world if an artist or anybody, but especially artists, can't have the right of free speech?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was on their mind. They were very scared, and it's obviously the negativity emanated from the deep state, the government, the intelligence services, to congressmen or senator or whoever who called the university president and scared the blankety blank out of her. The faculty and the students were on my side, obviously. Now, to remember, I was a graduate student there.
Hmm.
I got my MFA from Indiana University. I returned to Indiana and was a professor at Indiana University. And remember, I was offered tenure at that university.
Uh,
And I turned it down only because I went for tenure at a university I thought was at the higher level, but we won't get to that uglier story here. But to me, there was a personal journey that is very meaningful here, other than what they did and what happened. I've always, been Palestinian, and because of the what you find in propaganda of this world, I embraced Palestine even more. And then various people reminded me of my life in the Midwest, and I thought, okay, Samia, and they call me Palestinian American, and I don't like it. I'm Palestinian. What is this about? If you
mm,
want to create boundaries, I didn't create them. I don't believe in them. I want to go back to Jerusalem. So what gives? Okay, okay, Samia, accept there is a very substantial part of you that is American. Okay, I'll accept it. Uh, and and I'll condition what kind of American, what part of America I admire. There's a great deal, of course, that I admire, and that is part of my weave. Okay, so I was going with this show feeling, okay, now, Samia, you're going to arrive at some kind of, acceptance of everything, Midwestern Samia, Arab, Palestinian, American. And then I get the refusal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm about to embrace you and you're refusing me now. So I decided it's very appropriate. I shouldn't be a nationalist, neither a Palestinian nationalist nor an American nationalist. I should be an internationalist because this is what this experience told me. And I laugh. I laugh at it all because I don't know why it wasn't painful. I'm still laughing. I don't know. Some psychiatrist will give you the answer. Maybe it was because it was like concretely proving everything I've felt and thought. Here it is in concrete reality. You cannot deny it. What
yeah.
what
Yeah.
really was upsetting is to see 3 years of hard work with the curator, Elliot Josephine Leila Reichert, who put her heart into this show. It was harder on her to have the refusal than on me. One, I'm much older and my experience is much wider, and I understand the world from a more political point of view. But for her, it was one of the first serious shows she's doing, and an important professional point in her career, which got stopped at the very, very last moment. The blessing is that the book got finished and published,
Right.
which is nice. We have a concrete proof of all that I I'm saying, but it's a nice book.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I hope many people get to get it as well. And as you say, Sonia, the deep state is really quite powerful, sadly. Whether it's and so the censorship, we're seeing it more and more. I mean, Gaza has really exposed that. So, how do you think, is there a way to kind of work towards changing that narrative and the censorship on Palestinian art, Palestinian voices? And as you said earlier, thankfully for young students and encampments and people speaking out. But how can we bring that change to sort of cancel that censorship where we are being canceled, our voices? Or do you think that's not going to happen in a hurry?
No, I think there are much larger. Uh, uh, Let me use this example.
Mm.
If it rains hugely up the mountain, the river is going to flood way down in the valley. And if we are a little bunch of wildflowers or seeds or weeds growing at the bank, there's not much we can do. What we can do in such a position is to literally work with all of these groups and start building and building independently of the structures that are existent right now, creating new structures. I've seen people come through Instagram and declaring anybody who's being persecuted at the university, I will protect you pro bono.
Mm.
There have been quite a few people who have advertised that, and there are structures growing. I think much more needs to be done in these kind of solidarity structures. And I think the students, if as they begin to build, we're seeing the partnership between the grassroots and the unions grow. We need the unions on our side. We need to unionize ourselves. So I think that's the great hope.
Yeah.
When you have really strong structures growing, grassroots and unifying, you have a bank that grows, and no matter how much it rains up the mountain, we can still withstand it.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to do. It's
Yeah,
not a
no, I agree.
metaphor, but
Yeah, I agree. Actually, they shut down Shamim's Facebook and Instagram accounts 2 weeks ago. So talk about censorship.
yeah,
Yeah, recently.
I'm
Yep.
waiting any minute now for them to tell me but I don't appear visual with my face saying things. I just write things. And every once in a while they slap my hand. But
But I was going to ask you, given this current situation, because and you were talking about the rainfall up the mountain, these people, there's this feeling that big government is not listening to the people on the ground.
oh no.
So how do you keep that motivation and that sense of hope going in your work and in your daily life, actually, given the current situation? Do you feel that the structures you've been talking about, the grassroots of it, is enough? And do you think it can build to enough of a change?
Well, I think the change is not a minuscule change, not a local change. It will have to be an international change. And I think clearly we have a history. Let me talk about my artwork for a minute, and that
Yeah.
will answer that if it's okay.
Yes.
Please.
Because people asked me, where is Palestine in your work? I decided I needed to answer that question because the first person to ask was a young man who was fresh from the revolutionary spirit that was growing in Beirut, which was the growth of a class war in Lebanon at the time. Actually, it began to grow in Palestine and Jordan, and then matured in Beirut. And this young man was asking out of radical revolutionary impulse. But there are others who want Palestine in my work for other reasons, because then I'm not in the mainstream. They can put me in a little cubbyhole below And they have many, many cubby holes. They have one for Hispanic artists, one for Japanese, one for Black Americans, da da da. You're all unimportant. We are the Western white, whatever it is, and we are the real art of the world. The rest of you are just copying us. Well, again, bad word not being said online. Will not be expletive, but they're not making the art of the world right now. They're stealing it. And what they're stealing most of all is the work that is done inspired by working class revolution. And that's the part that, first I missed a step. So when I'm asked where's Palestine in your work, many different people want Palestine in my work for many different reasons. There may be a bureaucrat whom I would hate who governs in one of the Arab countries who wants a little calligraphy in my painting so he can hang and say, look, I'm an Arab. But where is the future of painting? I'm a painter. I'm not going to serve any of you. None of you have buttered my bread on either side. So, in fact, no one had for 50 years. I was a painter regardless of anything. So I decided why I'm a painter is because I love pictures. There's a history of visual material in Palestine. Where is painting going? What's revolutionary in painting? And what is the history of pictures? So, and I didn't like what I was being taught, so I rewrote art history for myself and decided what was what. And I decided to place myself, divide my art into three, call the making of art a craft, simple. Everything is a craft, including how to sweep the street and cooking and chess and etc. And that's not art. Art means craft, that's it. The other is thinking, ideas. And these ideas can be new ideas, research ideas, or ideas researched and now become useful. So I decided I'm going to place myself at the leading edge of research and the future of picture making. What is new in picture making? The newest stuff historically in picture making, and this is not personal, it has to be historical and sincere based on real things I've looked at. And what I found is that the most exciting stuff, the newest stuff, the only real abstraction of the 20th century was done at times of working class revolution. The Paris Commune, the Soviet Revolution, the Mexican Uprising, etc. And that was abstraction. And abstraction was stolen by the US intelligence and turned into something one might call New York abstraction. And then after they turned it into New Yorkishness, they decided to destroy it lest it become too important to the artists. And we have now postmodernism. When we had constructivism in the Soviet Revolution, now we have deconstruction in the backward revolution. So to me, the future is an abstraction. And abstraction is about reality. It's not about hocus pocus. It's about general principles in reality. I took you all on a big round circle. Where did we start?
That's fascinating.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to hear about, actually. So because we don't want it to be just about the politics of everything. No, I think that's really great.
And in terms of, but that goes to the next thing, in terms of young, up and coming Palestinian artists who want to tell their sort of vision and stories and whatever kind of they feel on the inside that they want to express. How do you feel they can be more appreciated, whether to their, in the world, whether locally or internationally, and without being shut down and censored?
Well, we're going to be shut down and censored by the West and by our enemies, and our friends will not shut us down. It's a hard question because it's a question within an environment for a beginner. The beginner has to begin because they want to do the thing, and they have to, first of all, accept to be true to themselves. And second of all, they have to see a clear line between the commercial world and the world that of making pictures. And that's I've had, I'm probably in my seventh decade of making art, or the sixth. I lose count, but that's a lot of decades of making paintings. Uh, and I have seen very clearly, and I put a very clear fence between. I ask everybody, what do you think of this painting, including my dealer and including the man who comes to fix the heating system. What do you see? I want to see what people see. I want to communicate if possible. But that's not what it's about. It's still there has to be a very, very clear division in the artist's mind between the commercial and the work they and their fellow artists do. The museum is part of that commerce. The schools are part of it. The magazines are part of it. The critic, the curator, you name it, they're all part of that commercial layer. One of the things that I learned from the uprising in Beirut, the class war in Beirut, was that the artists took over. And I know the critics were kind of scared of them at that point, but they're the ones who wrote the books. They're the ones who established the galleries, and they completely wiped away the administrative layers. Any administrative layer, just, you can't wipe it away. Right now, let's say you're living in Ramallah, you can't wipe it away. It's just, you're one person, but if a new intifada comes, who knows what will happen. Meanwhile, just be aware that there's a difference. That's important. And be confident in yourself. Study, look. The final push comes to shove of approval is yourself and what you see your society saying to you. But there's nothing wrong in not wanting to be on the edge of discovery. There's nothing wrong in just making useful pictures and posters and whatever.
Yeah.
I do all three.
Yeah.
I do the documentary, Kafir Qasim. I do posters. I do banners. They're very blunt about what I intend to say. But my paintings are totally abstract, but based on reality. And in a way, due to the history I just mentioned, they're the most political of all three.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And you mentioned, Samia, earlier that you went to another university, and that was an experience. The reason you gravitated also towards teaching, was it also to kind of continue your passion or your message, to share it, or to shape the next generation, or what was the sort of
It
the
was a wise choice to get out of the commercial world and be in academia, which is a little kinder to to your time. And I would have a library to go to. It was only 3 days of work and free summers. So yeah, it was pleasant.
Oh, sure.
And sorry, go ahead. Do you have any more plans for academia, or what are your current and future art projects that you're working on, if we may ask?
Well, there's so many projects, I won't get them all done. I have been for years, ever since that book, Liberation, Art of Palestine, I've been developing files and articles about Palestinian artists, and I really want to redo that book into a second edition. I also have ideas, theoretical ideas that came out of my house cleaning the House of Art History for myself. And that would take a scholar a lifetime to fulfill, but I've published a little bits of it here and there, and I would like to put that together. I also have the ambition of starting to program again. I'm doing a lot of work with trying to renew some of the kinetic painting programs. So programming is very enjoyable for me. So I wanted to get back to that. And I want to make I made many big paintings. That's another way of asserting myself. want to make big paintings. So I've made big paintings. I want to make at least one more big painting.
I love
And
it.
how long does that typically take, or is it just it depends on
It varies a great deal. I remember the first one I made was before, it wasn't very big compared to later ones. It was before I had any interest in my work. And so I took almost 6 months to do it. It was just fun. And I would say to myself, like, slow down, Samia. This is really fun. Let's just keep enough work for to enjoy it. Uh, Actually, it was the first painting I sold for any reasonable amount of money, and it was Suha Shuman who bought it.
Oh, okay.
And I was that was a pivotal moment in my life where someone came and looked at the artwork and actually gave me money for it. So that was special. But then after that, there was one that took a whole summer, and they vary a great deal. It's hard to say.
yeah.
Mm.
Uh, my grandniece makes fun. She says once she made a painting all in one weekend, but that's a rarity. There's another painting that took me 2 years, and then when that happens, and neither one is better than the other. They're both equally good in my view. But the 2 year one made me begin to think like something is fighting with me here. Is it me? What's going on? Why am I just not happy with this painting? So I began to give it a personality, this evil painting.
I think Suha was with Mama and part of the small group that followed Fakhr Nisa. Um,
Yes,
is that correct? Yeah,
she studied with Fakhrinessa. She
Fakhr
was one
Nisa.
of the group. That's a historic moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Fakhrinessa had spent quite a few years, maybe a decade of the 40s and 50s in Paris. I'm
Mm,
not sure which decade, before she got married and moved to Jordan. And she brought with her some of the abstract ideas. I remember one of the lessons, one of the women I had been interviewing people and taking notes. She was talking about if you see a fly walking on the window, would you follow her path? What is the path she takes? Which is typical of the ideas that were growing among the Soviet constructivists and the Bauhaus, the idea of time entering into painting. How does time enter into painting as a fourth dimension? So it's not just an image of a fly on the glass. There's a path.
mm.
So you can see paths in nature happening all over again, all over. Recently, by the way, one of the things that influenced my painting, my digital painting, my kinetic painting at the Tate Modern was a painting called Land. Was It first started with commands that I was exploring the basic commands in programming, and then it began to be about earth movements, the plates, how plates move, how, let's say, description of the Hawaiian Islands as magma escaping from between moving plates, and eventually building up to become an island. And I was thinking of how a lake and a tsunami comes over the land, how back and forth the ocean, the land, the movement of plates and so on. And I called it Land, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna dedicate this to Palestine." It wasn't a painting of Palestine, but someone came around in the Guardian, I hear, I didn't read the article, did a nice review of the piece, but then said I was drawing Israel, a map of
Oh,
Israel in
my
there.
God.
So the last thing I was doing was drawing specific things. Abstraction is about general principles, so that piece applies to anything having to do with the motion. The idea of time in the surface of the earth is fascinating changes taking place.
Mm,
So that's what it treats. And how it asserts itself in the artwork is there were shapes that were negative that would grow and overcome the positive and vice versa, and some would split in two. So it was like action, interaction, reaction taking place, and that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Incredible. It's so lovely to hear about it from you as well directly.
Yeah. No, and I think you also, you've influenced many generations of Palestinians and non-Palestinians. I mean, I know probably my mother and all the group of Fakhr Nisa, the very small group, I'm sure they were inspired by you and your philosophy and
I don't
art
know.
and
I don't
work.
know if they were inspired by me. No, no.
I'm sure they were, Samia.
Before me, but they were it's a very special part of our history. We should, it's an interesting group.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, but that's amazing. And Samia, when you go to Palestine and do you sort of see, besides the horrific settlements where they've taken over the best parts of our land, of historic Palestine, and they built these ugly monstrosities, do you find that, do you remember sort of all the sort of colors and smells and the family and the importance of Palestinian community, which you talked about at the beginning, or do you find that has been suppressed over time by the occupation?
oh, definitely, because they keep expanding and expanding. Slimane Mansour has an incredible painting called My Palestine Keeps Shrinking. And the land is very, very important. And there's a film that was made in Ramallah right now. I'm not remembering names. Unfortunately, I shouldn't mention things I can't remember. But I was very fascinated by the trees, the olive trees, the way they grew, the orchards of the trees. And several times, I remember once renting a car. I'm not answering you, I'm sorry, but trying to go between Nablus and Ramallah, driving to find a place where I could hide from the Israelis going back and forth in their little jeeps, checking everything. Where would I hide a rented car so I could go somewhere and paint without them bothering me because I wanted to be on the land? Uh, I did solve that problem and got but I remember also driving with a taxi driver once who took me from Ramallah individually to Nablus, and the whole way he talked about this was here, what happened, how they took this. It was a narrative. I wished I had a recording of it, of all the destruction and all of the stealing and all of the changing. And every time, and even what they've done, well, at the Hebrew University, I remember going with my friend, and her family's home was down the valley that had been taken, and her father's home was dismantled, and the stones were up, and she was looking at them and feeling very sad. And I drew trees in the garden of the Hebrew University that were from her father's olive trees down the valley a little bit. And what they did was chop them up, reduce them to a replantable size, keep the same, as I learned, if you keep the same, you keep them in the same orientation towards the sun as they were in their original place, and then planted in this Hebrew university garden, which was like a European garden. So olive trees would be growing soon, they would create their branches, and the theft of our land and the co-optation of our history is endless. But they co-opt and they co-opt and they don't manage to become part of the land. They don't manage to have the sympathy to the land we had, and they keep making a mess out of it. Driving through, occasionally driving through to visit friends in Haifa or in other of the Galilee villages, I would think, here I am going over there enjoying my friends. Why can't they do the same and leave everybody alone, live and let live? But that apparently is the last thing on their mind.
Mm.
Yeah, I had many, many experiences in Palestine that were amazing. do we have a minute? I can tell you a very funny story.
Yes, please do.
Well, one day I went to visit my friend in Shafa Amir, and he kept talking, and we were enjoying ourselves so much. And Samia, stay, I'll put you on the train, and you don't have to worry. Eventually he takes me, he puts me on the train. He finds a friend. He says, take care of Samia, make sure she takes. I don't read, I don't know Hebrew. I have no idea. And the train from Haifa, I managed to get to Haifa. The train from Haifa to Jaffa was reasonable because there was English subtitles to things. I get to Jaffa and I want to go to Jerusalem and it's all in Hebrew. And I'm saying, help me, God. I don't know where to go here. So what to do? I hear some people speaking Arabic. But that was a bit later. First, I hear someone who was speaking English. I said, this one looks like she's from Brooklyn. I go ask her, and yes, she turns out to be from Brooklyn. She speaks English. She's brand new in Israel.
Yeah.
And I told her, if you don't mind, and she just came from Haifa, forgive me, because now we became a group of people who were abandoned because the Jaffa train wasn't coming as predicted. If you don't mind, I'm just going to follow you till we get to Jerusalem, from where I knew I could take a taxi to Ramallah. So she says, okay. So I follow her. I managed to stick with her. The train to Jerusalem never arrives. We get a train to Lyd. And it's getting dark. It's night, and I'm following this Brooklynite to Lyd. And Lyd, they say, sorry, there's no train to Jerusalem. You're going to take a bus. So they send us out to the sidewalk. I'm just following like a sheep. And I get to the sidewalk, and it's cold, and it's dark, and I look around, and it's lit, and the people are all finding other solutions. And Samia, you're going to be sleeping on the sidewalk. So I said to her, look, I see some taxi cabs over there. You go, discuss it with the cab, how much they want, and I'll pay, and we'll take you home, and then he'll take me to Jerusalem. She said, okay. So she brings a taxi cab. He comes. How much do you want? And she just is floored. He tells her what he wants. She says, she couldn't pay it. I said, don't worry, I'll pay it. So we get in the cab.
Yeah.
I tell her, and she lives in a kibbutz off-road. I tell her, now you tell him how to take you home, because she speaks English, I speak English, and she's beginning to ask me. She thinks I'm an old Israeli. I say, yes, I'm from here a long time ago. And she tells me about her life. She is an American married to, and she has 4 babies, and she just gave birth, and her husband is unemployed. She has to go to Haifa once or twice a week in order to get the work she does at home to support the family. I'm feeling very sorry for her. So let him take you home, and she's scared of him. She's a new arrival to Israel. She's frightened. And no. If I see that the traffic is bad, he'll go this detour. And that passes my home. I said, no, let him take you home. No, she's too scared of him. And we're driving away. Suddenly his wife calls him. What language do you think she's speaking?
Oh, no.
Oh,
She's speaking Arabic.
yeah.
I told the driver, what? You're a Palestinian? He says, yes. He says, what? Why didn't you tell me?
Oh, no.
And she just goes into a fit of fear. It's too late to go to her kibbutz because we're past it. We're nearly in Jerusalem. And she gets on the phone. She goes, tap, 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 tap. She is so scared. It is beyond belief. I feel so badly for her. I would tell him, go back and take her home. But she's beyond being able to communicate with, what can we do for you? What can we do for you? We take her to a bus station in Jerusalem, she says. And the minute the door opens, she flies out like she is so scared. Anyway, that's a story that tells you everything about the situation.
Exactly.
So he started telling, why didn't you tell me? I told him, well, I thought you're an Israeli, and And where do you want to go? I want to go to Ramallah. And okay, I'll take you to Ramallah. We got to Ramallah and he started reminiscing about Ramallah and how they come every year to spend this and that holiday there and so on and so forth. So he
Mm,
took me to Ramallah.
that's so lovely. And did you ever locate your house in Jaffa as well?
Yes, I've located both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the Jerusalem, both.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
located Jerusalem. I located my cousin's home and my grandmother's home.
Mm,
My grandmother's home was divided into three apartments, and our
mm.
home was divided into 12. And there's a top on the roof, there's something called a restaurant built called the Israeli Experience.
Wow.
And I managed with my sister to get back into the old city and climb some steps to look down at the house. And the tenant came out and to talk to us as the steps were outside steps. We were trespassing a little bit, but she came out to talk.
Well, you
Uh,
weren't trespassing, it was your house. They were trespassing.
Truly. So yeah, it was interesting. I've gone back and forth a lot, and I've spent a lot of time there.
That's wonderful. That's so wonderful. It's just too bad we can't, as Palestinians, go back as with the right of return to our homeland and properties and so on.
No, I returned as an American citizen, of course, otherwise I would not have been able to enter.
That's right.
So I remember at the border when one village woman was diatribing, I had to become a foreigner to come back to my own homeland. You
Mm,
know, that there's the consciousness of that
yeah,
is
that's yeah, yeah. And Samia, I mean, this has been really fascinating, but is there anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered about your art, your life, your incredible legacy? Uh,
yeah, we covered so much. It's been fun. And
it's,
I'm glad I got to tell you the story about my return from Chef Amir to Ramallah
yeah.
in a roundabout way.
In a very roundabout way. And I mean, you are a living legend and Fakhr Palestine, really the pride of Palestine, not
Thank
only in art, but in your activism and everything that you do, honestly, truly. And I hope you do all the things you want to do and much more, Samia.
thank you. Thank
No.
you, both of you.
It's been an absolute treat. Thank you. And I just want to tell everybody that if they want to find out more about you, you just need to Google Samia Halaby or samiahalaby.com and treat yourself. Take some time out, go to the Tate Gallery if you're in London, Tate Modern for the Electric Dreams exhibition. But thank you. It was wonderful to just hear the stories, hear about your point of view on the world and about your art, Samia, and it was really an invaluable and very different insight than we usually get to have on the podcast. So thank you for joining us.
Well, I think the two of you as interviewers, your history is like my history, where I feel like I'm a generation older than you, I know that, but still we have that same common cultural history. So it's very nice. It made for a very enjoyable interview. Good luck to both of you.
Thank you, Samia. It is, and also as similar culture history and as family, and I know how close you and Mama were, and growing up and losing your country together. So it makes it even more meaningful. But
Yeah,
honestly, it's been so amazing getting to know you as well.
thank you. Take care of yourselves.
You
Thank you.
too.
You
You too.
too. And as we wrap up, please make sure to join us for our next episode. If you enjoyed this talk, please like, subscribe, share it. We want to, spread our ideals of humanism, of just being able to talk through the issues at stake here with more and more people. So please do spread the word.
And we believe stories and representation matters. So stay informed, stay engaged, take action like Samia, and see you next time.